Good morning, Magic. I'm Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast, and today I want to tell you about Double Masters 2022 Limited Archetypes and show off 8 preview cards to boot. Let's get into it. The first thing to know if you're drafting Double Masters 2022 is it's all about 3-color archetypes. The mana fixing is so good in this format that it's easy to play 3 colors, or even more, and combine multiples of them. Thanks to Cryptic Spires, more about this wild card in a future video, you can easily fix your mana. So instead of 10 2-color archetypes, we have 10 3-color archetypes. Let's go down them. First up is white, blue, black flicker. Who doesn't love getting value out of your enters the battlefield effects? Play creatures with enter the battlefield triggers, exile and return them, and get the effects again. It's also a deck that's happy to dig to find ways to close out the game with big flyers, like our first preview card, Tower Gargoyle. It's simple and efficient. A 4-mana, 4/4 flyer. Just the thing to mop up your opponent or protect it with your flicker spells in case they try and take it out. Next up is blue, black, red, graveyard, midrange. This deck ekes out a small amount of value out of the graveyard. It doesn't go as heavy on the graveyard as another deck I'll get to later, but it dabbles, as it uses a mix of disruption, recursion, and graveyard mechanics to try and outpace your opponent at each step. This also brings us to our next preview card, Sidraxis Spectre. Sitting at uncommon, downshifted from its original rare, this Spectre is a powerhouse on turn 3. But even if they kill it, you can unearth it and have it come back for one last hurrah. When in doubt, Jund them out. Black, red, green is pretty much your classic Jund deck. Using plenty of creature removal, individually strong threats, and a bit of sacrifice synergy, this deck just plays banger after banger. Is it the most original or synergistic? Nope, but your opponent will still lose to it anyway. That's Jund for you. A card you might want to pick up here is a preview card, Scab Clan Giant. Drop it for 6 mana, kill something, and make your opponent sad you 2-for-1 them again. Ah, Jund. Red, green, white is heroic aggro. This one is pretty interesting, using creatures with heroic, auras, and combat tricks to create a powerful early start. It makes sense that these 3 colors would be aggressive, but the heroic bent is one you don't see as often, and an awesome way to try and steamroll your opponent. You have to be a little willing to go all in with this deck, so don't be afraid to risk it all to kill your opponent quickly. Go big, or, well, go bigger with green, white, blue's big ramp strategy. Play ramp, play card draw, play big creatures, kill opponent. This 4-step strategy is a quick way to try and dominate. It's hard to outpace this deck when it gets rolling, so prioritize your ramp early and drop some big creatures on your opponent's head. Did somebody say Aristocrats? Oh, I guess I just did. Red, white, black is a sacrifice deck, using all kinds of excess creatures and tokens to fuel your sacrifice strategy. Power up your creatures and take your opponent out. And hey, a few well-timed removal spells don't hurt either. Like this pretty spicy downshift, Crackling Doom. For just 3 mana, you take out their biggest creature and deal some damage to boot. Green, blue, red is mid-range ramp. Going a little smaller than the band deck, this one drops a bunch of mid-sized monsters on your opponent. It also can use a bit of the blue flicker cards to good effect here, on cards like our preview, Bear's Companion, a great mid-range buddy that just keeps making giant bears if you can reuse it. How unbearable. You know it, you love it. White, black, green is +1/+1 counters. Build a bigger monster by making your creatures as large as they can be, and going wide to strike past your opponent. An amazing limited reprint here is this All-Star from Original Innistrad, Travel Preparations. This card can completely snowball an opponent early, and multiples have been known to make your opponent immediately slouch in their chair as your creatures grow huge. Pick them up and beat down. Blue, red, white is Prowess. Use creatures with both prowess as well as just triggers that happen when you play instants and sorceries to get an advantage. And one thing this archetype is always looking for are spells which create creatures to bridge that gap, like Heroic Reinforcements. Play it, pump up your prowess creatures, make some tokens, and then grant an additional +1/+1 on top of that. And finally, the big graveyard deck, blue, black, green. This one wants to go heavy on the graveyard, filling it up and drawing on the graveyard to enhance its creatures to its best effect and get so much value. And finally, you might notice there's a lot of multicolor going on here. Well, Cryptic Spires is one way to cast those spells, but there's also this reprint, Pillar of the Perins. This first-time reprint from Dissension can make whatever mana you need, provided you're casting all gold spells. Which archetype do you want to draft the most? Let me know in the comments down below. And until next time, go for the gold. You got this.
These were called the Karus inside Wizards, modeled after the Vision cycle of lands containing, well, Karu. Those lands were like these for 1 color, but with one big exception. You had to return an untapped land. That's a huge power level change, because it didn't set you back an additional turn worth of development to play one on top.